News items. First thing I'd like to mention is that Apple has an event coming up in March, and the various Apple rumors, Mac rumors, the various websites seem to indicate that they think Apple will be announcing new iMacs that are using the Apple Silicon chip in March. So for those of you who are uh, wondering whether now is the time to replace their iMac, uh, we'll see what they say in mid-March. Okay, hopefully it'll be a good result for you, so you'll be able to do your taxes on your new machine. Um, Other items going on. There's a current little hissy fit going on between Facebook and Apple Computer. You basically have two different ideologies in contention. One is that people deserve to have privacy and their data is theirs. And the other one is if I provide a free service, I get to glom all of your data and usage stats and repackage it and sell it off to other people. So we'll see who wins there. One of the things that I've done personally is I've taken any of my online accounts that are related to finances, my Social Security account, et cetera, and I've switched the primary email on those accounts from Google and Yahoo, AOL accounts, and just have them all using my Apple ID account now. Apple seems to be the only big tech company out there that actually cares about your privacy and protects your data. And so the stuff that's really important that I want to make sure stays protected, brokerage accounts, bank accounts, certain online store accounts, and of course government accounts. I'm now only using an Apple email address for those accounts. So if others think that's a wise thing to do, then follow. If you don't, then don't. Other than that, things have been pretty quiet. You had the final total demise of Flash. So if any of you are running computers that still have Flash installed, it would be a good idea to uninstall that Flash. And if you're no longer running Flash and you get those really annoying things about there's a new version of Flash and you need to update, you now know 100% positive that it's bogus. It's not for real. Somebody's trying to scam you. So with that said, I'm going to ask Rick to unmute people or have people unmute specifically to see if anybody else has any other news they want to contribute to the group.
They'll have to unmute as they want to talk because I can't unmute them.
And going once, I don't see anybody raising their hand, so I'm assuming nobody else has anything else of value they want to share. Okay, we're going to move on to for sale and wanted. I know Dan had some items that he wanted to get, Dan Duncan had some items he wanted to get rid of, which I've already gotten, and I have to provide Dan with some USB printer cables in exchange. Hopefully I'll get that done either today or tomorrow. Richard Kugler, you want to tell them about the extender you got?
Yeah, sure. I have a AC 1200 range extender for Wi-Fi. I haven't used it in a couple of years, so it's just taking up space in my closet, and I can't afford that anymore. So if anybody's interested in it, it's zero cost to you. As I found out with range extenders like this, it rebroadcasts the Wi-Fi signal with a different SSID than your basic router is sending out. So you end up having to switch the connection if you're going to roam around your house, for example, with an iPhone or an iPad or something like that. It's not seamless handoff, which was one of the reasons why I didn't stay with it.
There's no way to preset it, Richard?
Not that I found out, no.
Okay.
if you have a fixed installation like a desktop computer that's always going to be in the same location and it's a little distant from your main router, you can use this, and then you log into that one extender name, and then you don't have to, be concerned about it anymore. It's just primarily for mobile things, laptops, iPads, iPhones, that it's kind of an inconvenience. So the newer mesh router systems that have come out are much more seamless in the way things get handed off. So it's kind of been overtaken, for me at least, by technology. But if anybody's in a situation where they can use it, it's yours. Just let me know, and let me know how to get it to you.
A question: can you use an extender twice? You use one extender and then hopefully extend from there to another location.
Yes, you can. You'll have better efficiency with some brands other than others. My experience has been Netgear stuff seems to work the best. Powerline stuff, it seems to be, that's an older technology. Doesn't seem to really get me where I want to be. So yes, you can. I currently, in my current setup, I've got a combined setup. I've got older Apple airport technology, and I have newer Netgear Orbi technology. So I basically have 4 extenders going on right now.
Oh, that's very good.
I did it not so much for coverage purposes, but back in the ancient ages when my adult offspring would come visit with their plus ones and whatever, my network would get overwhelmed by, 20 iPhones, all these computers, all these laptops, and everything else everybody wanted to use. So I set that up so that my network didn't get over-resourced. Does that help, Derek?
Yes. I just wonder, how do you actually get this from, say, this gentleman, Dan? He said he has this extender. How do you get it? Do you just how do you do this?
Well, in his particular instance, he's got an extra piece of equipment, and if you want it, you contact Dan and Jimmy, Dick, Richard, and you make connections with.
Okay.
What do you currently use for your network, Derek?
Well, I use I use the ATT Uverse, what do you call it, Aris BGW210 for gateway. Okay. Then you go to another location. There's a second one. That's extender. Is RE200 by T-Link.
Okay.
But then there's another location not too far from there. I like to use that TV, and I could not actually get there just directly. For this distance from my AT&T to that RE200, it's just over one wall between them, a distance only about, 15 feet across the wall. And even there, I used the 4 steps to get there.
Okay.
I think I need another one to get to just about 10 feet diagonally from that location in order to use a TV set.
Okay.
For
so the signal strength in those other locations is not strong enough that you can just connect via Wi-Fi, or are you trying to connect everything
Wi-Fi
with cable?
Well, I don't know. I was thinking maybe I would switch to Dan's extender. Then I moved my extender to the additional TV site, because that extender has a connection. What do you call that connection?
Ethernet.
Cat5.
Ethernet.
That would be an Ethernet Yeah.
So that I can connect that to the TV. Then I was thinking of doing that. I wonder if that will work.
It depends on what the TV's got.
That TV.
Okay, let me just back up for a second. I'm gonna do, rather than address you specifically, I'm gonna do more of a generic thing. Where I usually start is I find out from the person, do you have wood studs in your walls or do you have metal studs in your walls?
Metal studs, wood studs.
Yeah. So what's in the walls? And typically, if the house, your apartment was built somewhere before 2000, it's almost always wood studs in the walls.
Yeah. I think that's wood, yes.
Okay. And that's good because wood does not soak up radio signals the way a metal stud will. Okay. So then the next thing I have them do is just draw a simple little floor plan. And then on that floor plan, indicate where their main unit coming in is located and whether it's a Wi-Fi unit or not, and then where they have other devices that they want to be able to connect. And then that tells me what kind of a circle I need to have to encompass those other devices. Because the radio waves, basically, the signal strength is propagated. Think of it as a circle, okay? The other thing is, if you have your Wi-Fi units placed low rather than high, you get a better propagation also. So I see a lot of people put them on top of bookcases on the very, very top shelf, thinking that they're going to get a better signal strength, where you're actually better if you have it at a desktop height or just slightly a foot or two above the floor. You get a better propagation of the radio waves. And then last but not least, I remind people that anything that contains a lot of water, like a water heater, or if you've got main water pipe feeds going through an area, water tanks, like on a commode, that sucks up radio waves like you wouldn't believe. So you want to have your things positioned so that they're not sitting, I'm thinking of one particular instance where they put their Wi-Fi extender right next to their hot water tank. And then they wondered why there was this whole area of the basement that they couldn't get any Wi-Fi signal in. And well, it's because it's in the shadow of that water tank. Okay, so anyway, that's just sort of general stuff. If you want to have a further conversation about this, Derek, you got my email, right? You know how to contact me?
Yes and no, I don't know.
Okay, then what I'll do is I'll send you an email and I'll also give you my cell phone number so that we can have a conversation on those days when I still have a voice.
I'm thinking the way I am imagining this should work. And
okay, it just, it never hurts to bounce the idea off of another person, especially if you have the opportunity to tell them how they're totally wrong and you're completely right.
Well, okay. I don't know. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Derek, I think we all need as much positive reinforcement as we can get. Okay, so good question. Thank you very much. Okay, who else have we got for help desk? I know we somehow sigged into help desk right away.
Help desk, you mean you can ask any questions?
Yes, Derek.
Okay.
But you already had one, so I'm going to put you on hold for a minute.
5 more questions.
Okay, but I'll come back to you.
I have a question, Bill.
Hold on one second, Dick. I'm going to go to Barbara Grave.
Okay.
Barbara, unmute and what's your question?
All right. When you're talking about these extenders and so forth, we have a TV that isn't hooked to anything but a small whatever to get a signal. What is the best one to use for that? I don't get very much back in the den, and it's the opposite end of the house from where the computer and all of this stuff is set up.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? I forget what you call it.
I'm going to walk you through it and you're going to explain it to me. So you got a television
Right.
And that television gets its entertainment stuff through a cable, or is it like a Roku or an Apple TV or a Google Chrome stick attached to it?
No. Our son got me something that I set it on a TV tray in front of the window that's supposed to boost the signals.
Okay, are you doing over the air, like a antenna?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to cut you off right now. Your homework assignment is, since we got other things we got to talk about, your homework assignment is to like take a picture of the TV, like the back of it, so we know the make and model of it.
Okay.
And just a picture of how it's currently set up, and then we'll have that conversation.
Okay.
Because it sounds like what you want to do is over-the-air antennas.
Right, and that's what it is.
Okay.
And I don't use that TV that much. It's just.
I understand, but I also know that when people say it's not really that important, I really don't use it that much, that it's something that's of concern to them. So well,
if I was doing more work back in the den, I would like it on, or
sure.
So
sure. And then I'll give you some other suggestions of other ways that you can be getting an over-the-air signal.
Well, you had mentioned that the Netgear has good equipment, and that's what I was wondering. What is some of the best equipment for something like that?
We'll have that conversation.
No problem.
Off meeting. All right. Mute yourself, please. Derek Chang, are you still there? Did you want to come back?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, let's give you a second shot. You get a second question.
Okay. I thought about what's the best. How do you, the more update you do on the Mac OS, the slower my initial booting goes every morning, and I always turn off every night.
Mm-hmm.
What's a better way to make this faster?
Well, instead of shutting the computer completely off, what you could do is just tell it to sleep.
Tell it to sleep?
To sleep. You have those three choices. You can shut it down, you can restart it, or you can sleep the computer. What sleep does is it tells it, hey, go into a low power mode, but don't completely turn off. And then when you tap your space bar or you hit one of your enter keys, it wakes up and you're ready to go. So you're not doing that shutdown and startup time. Because, I'm going to be 70 pretty soon. And I've learned that those precious hours waiting for the computers to boot up, it's not adding to quality of my life.
No.
So that's something I might suggest. The other thing is we might have a conversation about what stuff you have set up on the computer, because certain things, certain programs, Adobe products being one of them, and some of the Google web browsers, they seem to make that startup process go a lot longer than it should. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna say I've answered that question, and we're going to move on to.
Dick Rathburn had a question.
Say again, please.
Dick Rathburn had a question.
Okay. Now I see Dick. Hey, Dick. You got to unmute.
Can you hear
Dick.
me all right?
Now I can hear you, but you look like a cat. I think you put the cat filter on. I'm kidding.
Okay, I think you can hear me now.
Yes, sir.
Hope. Okay, I have a late 2009 21-inch iMac, along with an Apple Airport Extreme for a router. Both have worked wonderful. So I think I'll replace the iMac in March, as if you say they're going to put that chip in, the M1 chip, and that'll be a great time to do it. My question is, what does anyone think about a replacement for the Airport Extreme? Because Apple doesn't make them anymore. This one's been flawless for the whole house and outside the house. Works great. What about the EERO Pro Mesh Wi-Fis that are on the Apple site? Or does anyone else have a recommendation?
There's three that I recommend right now. The first one is Netgear Orbi, ORBI. The second one is the EO, the one that you mentioned that Apple has on their website. And then last but not least, Linksys has a mesh Wi-Fi router that's got pretty good reviews.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So with that said, is it something that you'd like me to maybe put up a tip sheet? Because there's a lot of us that have got the airports, and it really is, I won't say it's a barn burner, but it's something everybody should be planning on replacing this year. If you've got an airport or an airport extreme.
I think that would be a good idea. Also, I wonder whether the EERO by itself or with a button will work better. I like to think it probably would be okay just by itself.
You mean not have a satellite, just have a single unit?
Well, yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, so basically what you're telling me is that you don't have that big of a footprint in the house. One unit will do it. You don't really need to have a mesh system with an extender.
Yeah, probably right.
Okay. Then I'm going to defer to anybody else's opinion on non-mesh systems. Has anybody put in? Dan, do you have a comment, please? Dan Wyckoff?
Yeah, Unify has a router and extension both. You can buy them separately, so you can get the base router without the extensions. I've been using that for several years. It's a mesh router, but I just recently bought an extension to replace an Airport Express, and both are working very well.
Okay.
Bill, you can do that with Linksys too. You can buy just one satellite.
Okay.
And add on later if you want.
Now, what about if you don't want a satellite, if you don't need one? Do they have it where you can just get the base station?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually have a Linksys MR, I think it's an MR 9000, which looks like a regular, router, and it's got 4 antennas on it, but it is a mesh router. So I was able to add on the Linksys satellites.
Okay. So what you're basically saying is that if you got a really good price on just the base station, go for it and add a satellite if you need one later on.
Yep.
And if not, if you get a really good price on a mesh system, it's the price is comparable to just buying the base station. Just go ahead and buy the router and its satellite, and so you have a little bit of over coverage then.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, guys.
Okay. And I'm really hoping that they do announce those new iMacs in March, so I can feel foolish that I went ahead in December and bought one of the older last model Intels.
You probably got it at less price.
Actually, no, it was, this was full price, but it was for my wife, so it's okay.
You might mention the Wi-Fi standards that are out now, like the Wi-Fi 6 and 6E.
Okay.
The current, like our current iMacs only do, up to AC. They don't do the Wi-Fi 6. But I think the new iMacs should do the Wi-Fi 6.
That I don't have any information on. Rick, do you know anything about what Apple's doing in their latest and greatest?
I don't know for absolutely certain, but I do know that, of course, all the mobile devices will do 6. I don't think they do 6E yet.
No.
Although I would imagine any time now, but the Macs, I'm not sure. I think the M1s all do 6, but I'm not sure about 6E.
Okay, was that 6E you were saying?
Yes. 6
So they've decided they're not going to keep it simple like they were supposed to, where the next they were going to do Wi-Fi 6, and then they were going to do Wi-Fi 7, and then they were going to do Wi-Fi 8. So already we have a Wi-Fi 6E?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm thinking that would be a nice chart to come up with also. Standards. Okay. So anyway, for those of you who are not tech nerds, in the past, Wi-Fi which is wireless fidelity. It's something that was originally developed in World War II to control torpedoes launched from submarines. And then later on was used to do wireless fidelity in the 1950s by Hewlett and Packard, so that they could play their hi-fi stereo records out on the patio while they barbecued without having messy wires to the speakers outside. And of course, now we use it to connect mobile devices such as our iPhones, our iPads, and our various computers to connect to the internet without having a cable involved. The original standard was Wi-Fi 802.11a, and then later on there was an 802.11b, and then they went 802.11g, as in George, and then they went 802.11n, and then they went 802.11ac. And needless to say, the average person goes, wait a minute, shouldn't it be A, B, C, D, E, F, G? You know, what's going on here? So the manufacturers decided, and I think it was in conjunction with the IEEE, decided that they would call the next one Wi-Fi 6, the Wi-Fi 6 protocol. And it looks like already the marketing dweebs are modifying this stuff.
I just checked. The M1s use Wi-Fi 6, which is also 802.11ax. But
Wow.
they're not 6E yet. And 6E is the newest, and it picks up the speed dramatically because of the way it does some of the, I don't remember the details. I've read it all, but I forget. That's all I got.
Okay. So anyway, so just, you know, sort of put that in your trivia bin. Going forward, you want to be buying things that are doing Wi-Fi 6, or as Rick said, Wi-Fi 802.11ax. Did I get that right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've got the AX in my house, but the only thing that uses the AX is my cell phone.
Okay. Well, now Ray Ratchford just bought one of those new Mac Minis with the Apple Silicon M1 chip.
Ooh.
So Ray, you need to know that you've now got a device that does Wi-Fi 6. So you might want to look at your network equipment to see, you know, if you got that up to snuff for your newer equipment.
My router is a time capsule. It's both router and
yeah. So,
and hard drive up there.
Okay. So
probably in.
Yeah, so that's going to be something that you'll want to probably replace going forward.
Here's an unrelated question for you.
Okay.
By the way, Bill Howe has been helping me with the new Mac Mini. There's been a nightmare partly with it, but for the most part, it's doing pretty nice. It was a gift to my wife, and there's one program that won't run on it.
Yep.
And we're trying to figure out a workaround. But here's my question. Lots of times I have like on my iPhone, on my computer or whatever, and there'll be an update and then it'll set, okay, we'll install overnight. You have to have it plugged in and turned on and so forth. But then the devices go to sleep overnight. The next day it hasn't updated. So I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. I wind up during the afternoon say, okay, do it now. And then anyway, that's my question. Why doesn't it update overnight when it seems like everything is set so it should?
Well, one of the things might be your internet connection may be triggered and reset overnight, and your computers may see that and they'll know to stop whatever update they were trying to do. So that's something that I've seen happen when I was still using Spectrum internet services. I'm now using AT&T Fiber, and I don't see that happen anymore. My stuff that's supposed to update overnight does it. My Windows machines do that quite nicely. Another thing that can happen very often is sometimes we're running older equipment with newer operating systems, and the sleep function doesn't really work the way it's supposed to.
Okay.
A third one is sometimes we forget to flip that little switch that says wake for network access that's in the system preferences. Under, if I remember correctly, it's either going to be power saving or energy saving, something like that.
Okay.
So that's something I routinely turn on for the ones that I want to have updating in the evening, the early morning hours.
And what was the setting you said?
It's in the, it might be called energy settings or power settings. Here, let me just real quick. You got to remember, I work on a lot of old systems, and currently it's called Energy Saver. And in there, there'll be a setting that says wake for network access, and you want to have that checked on.
Okay. I'm making a note of it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And then last but not least, what I typically do is rather than update things willy-nilly whenever a box pops up, I go Sunday morning after church, I'll fire up the various machines and see if they need any updates, and then I'll just have them update Sunday afternoon. And I do that probably once every 2 weeks. I'm getting to be an old guy that doesn't necessarily like new stuff.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, so I've just been bitten too many times by the cutting edge. So anyway, so this may not be what everybody else should be doing.
What's really nice is when you get as old as I am, because I was about 12 or 13 years old when you were born, and you're lucky if you can remember your name, much less anything else.
Well, it all depends on whether the cops are looking for you or not. If the cops are looking for you, it's probably a good thing if you don't remember your name.
It's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
All right. Do
we have any other help desk items? I'm looking to see if anybody else has their hand up. Hi, Warner. I didn't see you had joined us. Welcome.
George
Reinhardt. Unmute yourself, George.
Shana,
very good.
There we go.
Shauna had something too.
I've been wondering about upgrading my late 2009 Intel iMac with a solid state drive rather than to make it boot faster. Would it boot faster? Is it a good idea or not?
Okay. I'll take a lead on this, and then if somebody else wants to pop in, go ahead, because I have a jaded view of reality. I think of these computers the same way I think of a used car. So if I've got something that's it's old, let's say it's a Dash Rambler, but it's a runner. It just keeps going. I'm more likely to put money into it than if it's something like a Ford Fix or Repair Daily from the 1980s. Probably no time to donate it to something else. So the thing you want to think about, George, is how long is that particular iMac with a Apple operating system going to be able to connect securely to the internet? And the chances are, because you're probably running High Sierra, is probably the latest and last operating system you can put on it?
I'm running just plain Sierra.
Just plain Sierra. Okay. Well, High Sierra and Sierra are going to drop off of the supported operating system list probably end of this year.
Well, my problem is...
and they will probably Google and Mozilla and the Apple Safari probably won't be able to connect securely from it next year.
Okay. That's
So,
one of two considerations.
sure.
One consideration is keeping current and keeping my internet connection. I understand that.
Right.
On the other hand, I've got a hard drive half full of old documents that I'd like to keep, but when I upgrade, probably it won't update. You know, it won't be able to read them.
Okay. So let's parse this out. So the original question is, putting in a solid state drive, will it make it boot faster? The answer is yes, it will. Okay.
Well, these drives seem to be pretty cheap these days.
Yes, they are.
Correctly.
They are very inexpensive. I've cycled out on my older equipment all of my mechanical hard drives, and they're all now running from solid state drives. And yes, they do boot faster. The thing to think about is this something you would do yourself or something you would take into a shop to have them do?
Well, I think I'd have to have somebody do it because, you know, I don't have the equipment to open up my iMac. It's glued shut or something.
Okay. Plus, you're a retired engineer, and it's better if we keep you away from tools. Anyway, yeah. So I know people who have done this themselves. They've done hard drive replacements and such, and we have a couple of them in the group. I'm thinking of Richard Kugler, who really gave me a good introduction to how he did that on one of his older machines. If you're going to have somebody else do it, then I'm got much less of a feeling about it. If you take it into an Apple store, they're probably not going to want to do it. So I would go to some other provider of Apple services. Example would be Micro Center down on Mosteller Road in Sharonville. They're Apple authorized. Their techs are Apple trained. They do really, really good work. And the Mark, the people you were talking about that just moved,
Jim City Digital.
Are they Apple authorized?
I don't know.
I know they do really good work. I just don't know if they're Apple authorized or not.
Let me look here.
So with the 2009 iMac, you don't really worry about whether you're going to void warranty that much.
No.
So, you know, they would be good people, and MCC would be, Micro Center would be good people to do the work for you. The other thing to think about is, okay, then you've got an iMac and it boots faster. Well, some of the machines that I still run, I don't have on the internet. I use them as dedicated word processors or financial centers. You know, I run tax stuff on it or accounting stuff on it, and I don't have them connected to the internet. So again, you know, as long as you have some other device that you can do your web surfing on, putting in an SSD in your 2009 iMac and using it as your Microsoft, you know, your legacy Microsoft Office machine makes perfect sense to me. Okay. Because don't you have a MacBook Pro or something else around?
No, I have an iPad.
Okay, you have an iPad. Okay, great. You got something that you can surf the web with and you can do internet searches with. So you've got that other way of doing it.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking maybe I need a new iMac as well, and keeping the old one for just what you suggested.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, Jim
Yes,
City
sir.
Digital says that they order OEM parts and they offer 6 months warranty on those parts, but it doesn't
Okay.
say anything about them being Apple authorized.
Okay, so they're probably like Experamac, where they had a source of parts that they could get in. Okay.
Bill Howe's got his hand up.
Okay, let's go to Bill Howe then.
George, if you do buy a new iMac, in their when you first start it up, it will allow you to transfer all the data from your old computer wirelessly to the new one.
Yes.
Through a program called Migration Assistant.
Yes.
And it works very well, but it runs on its own only when you first start up the new computer. If you start it up and enter all your data, then you'd have to go back and rerun Migration Assistant later. But it does have you do have the chance to get all your information from the old computer wirelessly when you first start it up.
Okay.
Okay, so just something to, make a note off to the side if you decide to get a new one.
Right.
Okay, do we have anybody else that's got a help desk question?
Question. Can I ask?
Okay, all right, Derek, third time.
Okay.
No, this is good. You're getting your value out of us.
Well, I want to ask you, what is the best way to charge iPhone 11 and iPhone SE second generation? I found out I turned them off, then tried to charge with this lightning cable, and then discovered it next morning, that's already on, and it appeared to be on, has been on for all night. What do you think?
Okay, I'm going to defer that to someone else with an iPhone.
When you said you turned it off, did you actually turn it off, or did you just put it to sleep?
I turned it off by, I see a kind of a dialog box that says turn off, and then I turn off. Okay. That's how I do it. But then I thought you have to connect the charger into your lightning jack, right, to see the multiple icons, then start from there. That's the safest way to turn off and remain off. But it turned out to be not true. So now I'm never sure how to do it right. So I'm not running the phone at the same time charging the phone.
Okay, I'm going to ask the same question, because what I've noticed is whenever I plug in the iPhone, I'll have it turned off. I plug it into a charger with a lightning cable. It immediately turns on and starts to charge. Is that normal?
Yeah. Yes.
That is normal.
Yeah. And I don't know why you have to shut it down or turn it off. Just plug it in and let it sit overnight, and it'll be charged in the morning.
I never turn mine off.
Yeah, I don't either.
There's no reason to.
One time I turn it off is if it's got a problem and I need to get a reset, and I'll turn it off sometimes to reset, but I never turn it off.
Okay, let me run this past everybody. So the other thing I'll do is I'll turn off my Bluetooth and my Wi-Fi on the phone before I charge it. So it'll charge faster.
Never do that.
It will charge it faster, but I never do that. But some people do.
Okay.
You can also put it in airplane mode and it'll charge faster.
Yeah.
And one other thing, your phone has to be plugged into a power source and connected to your network to do a backup on automated backup.
I never even considered that. I run a
I'll get a notification on mine saying you haven't backed up for 2 weeks. Plug in and attach to a network.
Okay, so you don't do tethered backups. You do iCloud backups.
I do both. I do both, but I tether it and then back it up to my laptop, and then also do the iCloud backup.
Okay, so let me go back to Derek.
Yes.
Does that help at all? So apparently whenever we plug them in to charge them, they're going to turn on because they got to be on to charge.
Yeah.
Oh, it's always, so I have to expect that.
And apparently you and I have been doing it wrong. Well, I don't know. Is that the right word?
Different.
But basically, we don't have to turn them off to charge them. If we just plug them in to the charger, it'll charge. We don't have to turn them off first.
Plus, it'll do the backup while it's charging.
I was thinking if I leave the phone on, it's less secure.
Well, you can go into your.
Let other people intrude.
You can turn off your Wi-Fi if you feel that way.
I think what he's worried about is somebody coming up and picking up his phone while it's charging and starting to use it. But if you've got your Face ID turned on, it's just as safe as any other time. I mean, if you've got Face ID or finger, your Touch ID, that's your security. Whether you're charging or not, it's still going to lock up. So your security, you're not relying on the fact that it's charging, and that's unrelated to security. And it's going to be the same thing if you set your phone down and go do something. You want it to be secure. So turning it off isn't the answer to that.
Yeah, if you're concerned about security, go into your settings on your iPhone and go in and just turn on airplane mode, and that turns off your Wi-Fi on the phone. And then when you're done charging or when you want to use it, turn the airplane mode off, and then your Wi-Fi will reconnect to your network.
So I'm going to put one last 2 cents.
Bill?
That is, the Apple mobile devices are among the securest mobile devices that are made on the planet.
Right.
And the chances of a hacker coming in remotely into your iPhone is much, much smaller than any other device. So I don't really think it's a real world concern for Derek and for me.
Hey, Bill, we have to do raffle if you're going to do a break, and it's a little after 11.
Okay, so I'm going to say we have officially finished help desk.
Kathy, you want to explain how we're going to do the raffle?
Dan had his hand up. Did you want to cover that real quick before we move on?
I just wanted to recommend to Barbara, she goes to antennaweb.org and you put in your zip code. It'll tell you all the TV stations and the direction from your location, and that gives you a signal strength.
Yeah.
And
it's much better than the FCC site. It really is. Antennaweb.com.
.org.
Excuse me.
All right. Back to you, Bill.
Okay. We're turning it over to the raffle folks. I'm going to disappear for just a little bit here, and then I'll be back in just a bit.
Kathy, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
You going to explain how this raffle's working?
I guess I can. The council decided to do the raffle again, and it's going to be not one, but 2 gift cards at $50 each. And while we were in our meeting, I have been adding numbers as a ticket number to those who have appeared in our meeting. I have it here, and just like before, Mark is going to pull the numbers out of a hat or whatever he's going to do. And therefore, whoever wins, I will email you, hopefully by later today, your gift card.
Okay. I'm going to pull a number. Now, everybody's already been pre-assigned a number as you join this meeting. And I'm going to pull a number, 2 numbers out of this little thing here. And
Before you announce them, let me do something here. Okay, go ahead.
All right. 31. Do we have 31 people?
Yep.
And 20.
Okay. If you can see if 31 is Phyllis Barker, 20 is Kathleen Wessenich.
There you go. So you guys have won the raffle this month.
You guys got Kathleen's right email now?
Yeah, I hope so.
Kathleen, can you email me so I can double check to make sure that?
We had a problem with your email the other day, Kathleen, so we just want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a charter.net email account?
She shook her head yes.
No, I wasn't looking. She's muted.
Yeah.
All right.
She shook her head yes.
Is there any questions, problems, or whatever, how we're doing the raffle?
Who's the other one?
Unmute yourself.
Nope. Seems easy enough to me.
Okay.
Who is the two winners? Kathleen and who else?
Phyllis.
Oh, Phyllis, good. Congratulations.
Everybody's got a little number that I'll pull 2 random numbers out.
Cool. That's great.
All right, we're on break until Bill comes back.
Thank you for coming out. This is General Meeting 302, and the topic is email back to basics. Just a little thing, just to let you know, next month we'll be doing email again, but it'll be how you go about setting up your Apple Mail on your phone, your iPad, and on your desktop machine, and some of the settings that Apple doesn't really tell you about. So this is not going to be that this month. This is going to be more conceptual. Email. Okay, so what are we going to cover? First, what is email? We're going to do a brief history of email. We're going to do some email terms that we will not quiz you on, but I think it's important that rather than just hearing acronyms, you actually know what they're supposed to stand for. We're going to talk about the anatomy of an email address. Then we're going to talk about formats, U.S. Postal Service versus email. So, I always like to try and make a connection of the old with the new. So how you would format stuff if you're sending it through the Postal Service versus how you set it up if you're doing emails. Now, excuse me. Then we're going to have a really complicated flow chart with how email servers work. Then we're going to talk about email clients, and I've got the market share data for January 2021. I think it'll surprise you. It surprised me. Then we're going to talk about email client versus webmail. And then last but not least, we're going to have what I call DDTs, the stuff that when I'm feeling harsh, I say, oh my God, don't do that. DDTs, don't do that. Okay, any questions on what we're going to be doing? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody saying, oh no, so we're going to go for it. Okay, what is email? It's a fundamental internet technology used by nearly every person on the globe with an internet connection. It allows you to easily send a letter to one person or many people almost instantly. And setting up your own email account allows you to communicate with people in ways you never thought possible. Now, that can be a good thing, and it can also be a bad thing. So we'll just say no comment on that. Brief history of email. Email is actually older than the internet. Back in the day, we were doing email with FidoNet. And anyway, email is older than the internet. It was developed in conjunction with the Advanced Research Projects Agency network in the late 1960s. So ARPANET is the acronym for that. It was the precursor to the internet. And originally emails were plain text only. In fact, emails actually were only, there was no lower and upper case. You just had letters, and there was no way you could do attachments. It was only after ARPANET morphed into the current internet that email started to look like it does today, which would be, fancy letters, upper and lower case, colors, and being able to do attachments. Let's go on to some email terms. So the first one is an email client. What is it? It's a dedicated email program. Examples: Apple Mail, Microsoft Outlook, Google Gmail. These are all dedicated programs for doing email. Webmail. Webmail is when you're collecting your email, you're doing your sending and receiving of email using a web browser. So when they talk about webmail clients, they're really talking about web browsers. Then we have another thing called DNS, Domain Name System. This is servers that exist on the internet that will change a domain name, such as apple.com, and provide the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, the 9 digits that actually represent that on the internet using good old IP4. So in the same way that, Bill Herrick, 207 Bradstreet Road, Centerville, Ohio, can also be represented by 45459-4515 as a zip code. The zip code is the IP address, and all of the other gobbledygook would be the domain name, if you will. Then we have a thing called SMTP. It's a protocol, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And this is a typical computing term. There's nothing simple about SMTP. Then we have another way of doing email, which is called POP, Post Office Protocol. And then another way of doing things, which is called IMAP, Internet Message Access Protocol. And then last but not least, the term ISP, that stands for Internet Service Provider. So in my case, I get my internet from AT&T, so AT&T is my ISP. Okay. So let's move on to the anatomy of an email address. So here we've got the typical name@company.com. Well, the name part of that, everything that's to the left of that @ symbol, that is the username, okay? And as it says in this little diagram, it explains very nicely that, it says who owns that particular address. So if it was William Herrick at iCloud.com, the username would be William Herrick. The @ symbol was used because no one has an @ symbol in their name. And in the pre-internet days, when they were going to start doing messaging, they wanted some way of signal where the name ended, the username ended, and where the institution that hosted that account started. And so that @ symbol made a very nice break that they could use. So immediately to the right of the @ symbol, you have what's called the domain name. In this case, it's the word company, and that refers to the mail server, the computer that's going to be storing your electronic mailbox. Okay. And it's usually the name of a company or an organization. Then you have a dot. Yes, I know it's a period, but they call it a dot. That's to separate the domain name from the domain. And then after that, to the right of the dot, you have .com or .org or .edu or .mil or .gov. That indicates what domain of the internet that domain name belongs to. So I'm thinking about way back in the day where when the White House first got an email address, and they were, of course, whitehouse.gov, and some pornography company got a hold of whitehouse.com. And so people who didn't realize that the domain for a governmental institution is going to be .gov put in the wrong thing, and they would not find what you would normally find at the White House. There's one other extension that does occur on an email address. In North America, the assumption is that anybody that's doing email is in the US. So after .com, you don't have to put .us. But if you're sending email to someone and they're in another country, you typically would have after the .com or the .edu or .gov, you'd have another dot, and then you'd have a 2-letter abbreviation for the country. So for example, if name@company.com was located in France, I would put name@company.com.fr. If they were in Mexico, I'd put name@company.com.mx. And if they're in Canada, it'd be name@company.com.ca. And on the internet, there's a list of the government, the national abbreviations for all the different nations. All righty, moving right along. Now we're going to talk about formats. USPS, United States Postal Service versus email. So the little diagram I brought up at the top, this is over on the left of the screen, it's supposed to represent an envelope. So if you were going to address an envelope and send it through the United States Postal System, you'd have a return address in the upper left-hand corner of the envelope. You'd have the address of the person that it's addressed to, the recipient, is going to be centered in the middle part of the bottom part of the envelope. And in the upper right-hand corner, I didn't put a stamp, but you should have a stamp. So underneath that, I've got in blue the representation of the letter that would be inside the envelope. And again, you would start out with the person's name and their address, and then a date, and then you'd have a subject, you know, what you're talking about, and then you'd have your salutation, dear Mr. Mosharraf, and then you'd have the verbiage that you want to communicate, and then you'd finish up with your closing. So that's how you would do it for something that you're sending through the United States Postal Service. So let's look at how you would do that for email. Well, the envelope would be mail from, so that would be the email address that this communication is coming from. And then you'd have your RCPT2, that would be the email address that's the destination, and that's the equivalent of the envelope. Underneath that, we've got from and the person's name. Now that name is the real world name that's associated with the email address. So the Baruz Forzan is the equivalent of the one where it's going from the deanza.edu. Underneath that, you have who it's going to. Again, that's the real world name. And typically in people's contacts, they've got a real world name and they've also got that person's email address. So they're linked together. And then underneath that, there'd be a date. Now here, this is where the date gets generated not by the user, but it's generated automatically by your computer. So when you go to send it, that's the date it was sent, and there's typically another date that's received, and another one where date that it's read. And then underneath that is going to be a subject. So you got to have something in the subject. If you try and send the email off without a subject, you usually get a little, oops, you need to put a subject in. And then underneath that, you're going to have the body of the message, which is going to be what you want to communicate to the person. And standard usage, email etiquette, you do start out with a salutation, even if it's a, hey, Bob. You know, you put something at the beginning, and then you put some verbiage underneath, and then you usually have some sort of closure. So that's how you format up your emails versus how you would do old style postal office service. Now we're going to go into how email servers work or they don't. Okay, I'm looking, I don't see anybody with a burning question so far, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue, and we'll go back to questions at the end. So all the way on the left lower corner, that's where we're going to start. That's somebody's computer someplace, and they want to send an email to someone else. So they go ahead and they fire up either their web browser or their email client, they compose a message, and they press send. That gets sent out on port 25, it's an internet port, and it gets sent out to your email server. So let's say the person who's sending it is on AOL and they're using an AOL email. When they hit return or enter or send, it goes to an email server run by America Online. And it goes into a special kind of server that they're running, which is called an SMTP server. And the first thing that server does is it looks at the domain name of the recipient and it goes, hey, is this to another person on AOL? If it is, I'm going to put it into my POP IMAP server for that person, the recipient, to pick up later on. If it isn't, the SMTP server is going to talk to an internet DNS server. So basically what that SMTP server is going to say is, hey, I'm AOL.com and I've got an email for someone at gmail.com. DNS server, is there a gmail.com that exists out there? And if it exists, what is their IP address? The DNS server then responds back, yes, there is a google.com and the email address, the IP address is blah, 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 blah. And now we're able to send that. So the SMTP server that's over on the left then connects via port 25 again. That's what all this email gets sent on to the SMTP server for google.com. The first thing that SMTP server does is say, oh, hey, is this an email for someone on my domain, google.com? If it isn't, it'll do a redirect and basically say, hey, you sent it to the wrong people, try it again. If it got it right, it'll put that email into its POP IMAP server for the recipient to pick up later on. And then last but not least, at some point, the lower right-hand corner, we have that other computer. They fire up their computer or their iPhone or their tablet. They launch their email client or their web browser pointed at google.gmail.com, and then they read their emails. One of the things that's very important to understand is that while you temporarily may have an email on the outgoing computer, and you may temporarily have an email on the incoming computer, the emails actually reside on those SMTP servers and those POP servers. That's where the mail really resides. So when people say, oh, I've got the email on my computer, well, no, not really. Your computer is just talking to a POP server or IMAP server where the email actually resides, and it's showing you what's up there and may give you some of that, especially attachments that'll actually download to your machine. Okay, I got to take a sip of tea after that one.
John's got a question.
Go for it.
Yeah, hey Bill, if you use Apple Mail, but your SMTP server is Gmail, then how does that kind of work together?
Okay, so we're talking about Apple Mail, the program, right?
Right.
Okay, that's an email client. Email clients can send and receive emails from more than one email account at the same time. Okay, so let's say you're using Apple Mail. Apple Mail, if you've set up your email account on it, can talk to an Exchange server. It can talk to google.com. It can talk to multiple AOL.com addresses. It can handle a whole bunch of different email addresses that you have. Let me back up there. I really didn't do that very clearly. Some of us live very complicated lives. We have more than one employer. We may be associated with more than one school. We may have some sort of responsibility at more than one organization. So we have multiple emails, okay? With an client like Apple Mail or Outlook or a Gmail program, I can set it up so that when I say get my mail, it goes out to my AOL account and brings in my AOL mail, and it goes out to my employer's email server and brings in my employer email. It'll go out to my school account and bring in my school email, and it'll go out to various organizations that I belong to and bring in my email from them, assuming that they've given me an email address. So does that sort of help, John, explain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to send something from an email client, it looks at what email address you're sending from and then talks to that appropriate email server on that domain. So if I'm sending from tmgdayton at AOL using an Apple Mail program, it knows to go talk to the AOL email server to send and receive emails for me. Okay. So I can be composing all of these emails. I can be composing one for my AOL account, another one on a Gmail account, another one on an Exchange server account. And when I say send my emails, it sends it out to the appropriate domain email server. And when people receive that email, it looks like I sent it from that AOL account or that Gmail account or that Exchange server account. And really the only benefit I get from using an email client is that when I look at the inbox, I'm looking at the inbox for all my different email accounts. So instead of having to log into each one separately, which is what you do with webmail, it's bringing them all in at once so I can plow through it relatively quickly. Okay? Okay. Anybody else?
I've got one question.
Yes, sir.
You say that email is actually residing on the server, the POP3 or IMAP server. If there's something in that you want to keep, if you move it over to a file that's on my Mac, does that put it on your computer then?
There are ways that you can bring down email and save it on your computer. I don't recommend that, but you know, we would have that discussion, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
But then if it's on that side angle of the Mac Mail thing, there's mailboxes that are just called on my Mac. Those aren't necessarily on your Mac then?
The ones that say they're on your Mac are actually on your Mac.
Okay.
They are stored in what's called an MBox if you're using Apple Mail. They're stored in containers with different names if you're using a program like Microsoft Outlook, or back in the day Microsoft Entourage, or there's an actual Gmail application that you can run on Windows machines and on your iPhone and such. There's a way that you can actually store that stuff permanently, archive it, if you will. Okay, but the thing to remember is that if it's truly email, it's sitting on an email server. The mail is actually up there.
Right.
Okay.
Bill, you can always highlight it, copy it, and put it into Word or Excel or whatever you want.
Yeah, what I usually recommend is rather than using your email system as this huge reference filing system, I mean, that's got disaster written all over it. What you want to do is if you've got something that was sent to you via email and it's really important, it's vital that you keep as a reference item, print it out and put it in a manila folder. Okay, or if you're more modern, save it as a PDF and put it on a secure flash drive. But you want to get it out of that email system. You don't want to keep it in an email system. Is meant for stuff that's transitory. It's not permanent. It would, the equivalent is, do you let your postal service mail just sit on the break front, or do you plow through it and triage, junk mail into the recycle, and you only keep the important stuff that you actually file away? Okay, digital hoarding is a real problem with most people. Okay, anyway, I'm going to move on, if you will. Okay. So, and then we would have had questions. So if we've got any other questions at this point. Okay, I look like I'm
yes,
good.
George.
Okay.
George Herzog has one.
Go for it, George.
Okay, the question was asked about saving on my Mac. I've got a whole series of folders I've created to do exactly that. And you're saying not to do that?
Okay. The number one thing that I see that corrupts up email is elaborate, intricate folder structures that people set up. The thing to remember is that when you're setting up an intricate folder structure, you're actually setting it up on the email server, okay? And the email server has to be kept in sync with your devices. So if you're going to set that up, you really, think about it. Do you really want to have several years of emails on your iPhone or on your iPad? You really only want it on something that's got good storage, and that would be some sort of desktop machine. Okay.
Which is what I do.
Okay. So, you're not completely beyond the pale here. But
let me ask you also,
sure.
When I try to clean things up to send it to trash, if I delete an email, I'm only deleting it from on my Mac folder. It still resides in the ISP. Is that correct?
It depends on how you're doing it. All right. If your folder structure on your Mac is synchronized with the server, when you delete it on the server, it also will remove it from your Mac. Okay. The problem is sometimes that connection gets disrupted. So people think they're deleting it from the server, but they're just deleting it from their local machine, or conversely, they think they're deleting it on both, but it's only deleting it from the server and not from their local machine. So, you got a situation where a lot of things can go wrong when you've got to have those folders in sync with the server.
So how do I know if I'm saving memory when I delete emails?
Okay. The appropriate question should be, since storage is pretty much unlimited for all intents and purposes for email. When you think about how large an email is, you can have literally millions of emails on a relatively small hard drive. The question you want to ask yourself is, do I want to be a file clerk? Okay. So that's the first question, because typically people are manually filing these things into folders. There's very few people I know that actually know how to set up email rules where this stuff automatically gets sorted. And the second question is, am I going to be able to find it in that elaborate folder structure? You know, it was a joke. Did I file it under jokes, or did I file it under something that was work related because it was a work joke? And even worse, if I'm not around to navigate the folder system, is somebody else who's never set up that folder system going to be able to find it? So this is the thing that back when I was a database manager, that I would always pose to the customer as we were setting up their databases. You set up databases not for ease of entry, though that's a good thing to have. You set up databases for ease of retrieval. Okay, so you can, because the whole idea behind a database, behind a filing system, is to be able to find it when you want it. Well, think about it. These email systems have search functions. It's actually easier to do a search than it is to rummage through the different folders to try and figure out where you filed it. Just think about it.
When the search is occurring, is it searching the ISP or is it searching on my Mac folders?
You can set it so it's doing both, or it's only doing one. Okay. And again, that's where we run into problems. The whole problem of data, where does it actually reside? You know, I've had people where they thought they were saving something on their local machine, but they actually were saving it somewhere else. Maybe it was an iCloud drive, maybe it was a Dropbox drive, maybe it was a Google G drive, you know, and then they don't realize where they saved it. See, I like to set my stuff up so that when it's a bad day and I'm confused, I can still find stuff. I can find it when I want it, even when I'm not on the top of my form.
When my folder structure for the on my Mac emails is pretty much somewhat similar in logic to where I would have alternately saved it if I were to save it to a Word document, for instance. In other words, my document folder system somewhat parallels the email folder system.
The question I have for you, though, is if you're not around to help guide them through that folder structure, is someone else going to be able to find it?
And that applies either to the document folder system as well as the email folder system.
That's correct. But if they use a search engine and they know how you keyword stuff, they can find it.
But the search would work both for emails and documents, right?
And for the stuff that's on your local machine and the stuff that's on your cloud drives.
Right.
That's why search engines are, this is what saves me every day. I don't remember who sent it. I don't remember when they sent it. I'm not even quite sure what it was, but I remember the one thing from that email was they had, you know, this in it, and I do a search for that and I find it.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go on a little bit here. We're going to talk about email clients. Now, again, I'm talking about programs that let you do email. So this is data from January of 2021. So this is current data. 37% of emails are sent or received from an Apple iPhone. In other words, it's using the Apple Mail program on an Apple iPhone. 30% of emails, now this was, 30% of the emails sent in 2020 were through Gmail, Google Gmail. Apple Mail, now that would be Apple Mail on what we call, a regular computer, a desktop computer, a MacBook, whatever. So it's running under Mac OS. 11% of emails sent and received. Outlook is only responsible for 8% of emails. Yahoo Mail, 5%. Samsung Mail, 1%. And again, when we're talking about Samsung, we're basically talking about their phones. Google Android, another 1%. Apple iPad, 1%. Outlook.com, 1%, and Windows Live Mail, 0%. It's less than 1%. So that means, let's see, 37 plus 11, that gets us to 48. 49% of emails sent and received in 2020 were done on Apple devices using Apple email programs. That totally blew me away when I saw that. Yeah, George.
How about comparison between texting and emails? Did you run across any data like that? I've got it. I think what is probably a generational problem with my family. I can't reliably count on getting a response on emails, and I don't like doing texting. So I think it's a generational issue with my younger family members.
Well, with my family members, my adult offspring, I have trouble getting them to respond to phone calls, texts, or emails.
Well, they just don't like you.
Well, what I do is I just have their mom send them a missive, and then all of a sudden they'll respond because they know she's still got control of the credit cards. And
why are you ignoring your father?
So anyway, so let me go on here for a second. But this just blew me away. I always thought of Apple as being a minority thing, and all of a sudden I'm going like, my Lord. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about email.
John's going crazy.
Which John?
Skoko.
Hey, Bill.
Okay, John.
Could you go back to the previous chart?
Yep.
Okay. Now, I guess I'm a little confused as to how an iPhone email is different from an Apple mail. Is that only the device itself?
Okay.
Because the email programs are actually merged together, I guess. So
okay. When you're sending an email, you don't know what device it's going to go to. You just know the email address is going to go to. But the email server for the recipient has to know where it's sending it, because it'll format it slightly differently depending on whether it's going to a phone versus a tablet versus, something with a big screen. And it'll know, let me take that back. When you're receiving it, you're pulling the data with your device. So at that point, your phone is talking to your email server. So that email server knows it's talking to a phone, or it knows it's talking to an iPad, or it knows it's talking to a desktop machine. So that's why they're able to break this stuff out.
So Gmail, which has my email account, knows that it's talking to my phone, or knows that it's talking to my desktop.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, it may not know the exact model, but it'll, like, for example, if it's an Android phone, it may not know that it's an HTC phone versus a Samsung phone, but it knows it's talking to a phone running Google Android. Okay.
Because like like I typically use Apple Mail.
Yeah.
So if I delete a message off of my computer, that doesn't necessarily delete it off the iPhone.
Okay. Remember, where does the email reside?
It resides in Google.
It resides on a server up there. So when you're deleting an email, you're deleting it on the server. And when your iPad goes to talk to that server, the server says that email's not there. It's gone. If your phone talks to that server, it says it's gone. If your computer talks to the server, it says it's gone. It's only if you are saving stuff locally that it'll say, oh yeah, it's still there, even though it might not be on the server anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of where it gets to be a little confusing is when it's saved, how do I really know where it's saved?
Well, that's why I'm not a big fan of saving emails on the local device. You want it going into a saved folder or an archive folder on that server. So when I go to check mail with my phone, I can find the thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I think somebody just had some light bulbs go off above their head. This is good. Okay. So let me talk about email clients versus webmail here. Popular email clients, you got Google Gmail, you got Apple Mail for iOS and Mac OS, and you got Microsoft Outlook. And again, Outlook for Mac OS, Outlook for Windows 10. So these are actual programs. The email clients can send and receive mail from multiple email accounts at the same time. Okay, so that's the main advantage. You're using one tool to handle different email accounts, and you can, process your mail relatively easily, get an overall vision of it. This really is only beneficial to people that have multiple email accounts. If you got one email account, it doesn't matter whether you use an email client or you're doing webmail. You always are just logging into one place to send and receive your emails. Now, the most popular webmail clients are Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Microsoft Edge, and Apple Safari. These are web browsers. Now, with webmail, you got a web browser connected to the internet, talking to a web server, which then is talking to the email server. So you're going to the AOL website, and then you're clicking on mail, and the AOL web server is talking to the email server. Okay. So again, remember, these are web browsers. So you got that one extra little step going on in there. Webmail is preferred by most free email services because they generate ad revenue. Now think about it. If you're using a web browser to get your mail, let's say you're going on to Yahoo to get your mail, and you're using a web browser. Over on that right-hand corner of the screen, you're going to have all those ads, and they're making money for each little ad that got placed on that page. And there's typically up above, you got the thing that looks like an email, but you realize you can't delete it because it's an ad. If you click on it, boom, they took you over to Kohl's and they're showing you men's shoes. Okay, so that's why these free email services like AOL, Yahoo, Google, I'm trying to think of somebody else out there. Who else is out there? Juno. They love it because they get ad revenue from it. It helps pay for this free, in quotes, email service. I like using an email client because I don't see that stuff. I can process through my mail quicker, especially if the same email from a retailer got sent to multiple email accounts. I can go, oh yeah, okay, it's from Costco, boom, 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 delete, 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 clean them out. Okay.
No, Bill, have you checked the clock?
Yeah, I'm right at 12:05.
12:06. Well, I got 12:06 on real time, but
okay. So I'm going to skip questions. I'm going to go to my last DDTs. Don't do that. Number one, don't use your employer-provided email as your primary email. Why? Because one day you will leave, and they'll lock you out of their email server, and you won't have access to those emails. And people that send you stuff won't be able to get access to you. And you won't be able to change passwords on other things. Let's say you signed up for Kohl's department store using your employee email account. You have now left the company. you want to change the password on your Kohl's account, and they send the email verification to the account you don't have access to, you're locked out. Another one, don't use your internet service provider email as your primary email. Why? Because one day you would change ISPs and you'll be locked out of them. And anything that you use that for, you'll be locked out of. Don't use your email as a filing cabinet. I know a lot of people don't like when I say that, but if you need to keep something vital for reference, print it on paper, put it in a folder, put it in your filing cabinet. When you got to print it, you go, yeah, I really don't need that. Don't create elaborate email folder structures. Ask yourself 2 questions. Do you want to be a file clerk? And can you find it after you filed it? Use the search function. That's why it's there. And last but not least, I see people do this all the time, and I keep going, you only got those few years left, and you're spending it scrolling through your emails looking for something. Don't do that. Use the search function. Put in a search. Show me emails from Rick. Show me emails regarding to this. Message subject has this word in it. You'll save yourself a lot of time and effort, and you can use it for doing important things like finding new beers to drink, or trying new cheeses, or shoveling snow. Just so much better use of your time. Okay, and with that, I'm done. And for those of you who have put up with the long presentation, if you got any questions, I will stay on to answer them. And if you don't, I will stay on. Let me see here. Let me do an escape.
Question?
Uno momento. Let me stop my share here. Okay, now I'm good.
Question.
Yes.
The number two item on the last slide, ISP provided email. What is that?
Okay. Who do you pay to provide internet access at your home, Derek? Is it Spectrum? Is it AT&T?
AT&T, yes.
Okay. AT&T is your internet service provider. Okay. So let's say one day you go, I can get a better deal from Spectrum. And you decide you're going to change from AT&T to Spectrum providing the internet. If you used your AT&T email to sign up on all these other sites, and you've left it as a customer, you don't have access to that email anymore. So what I always recommend is use a Google Gmail account, or an AOL account, or a Yahoo account, or use your Apple ID email as your primary email. Don't use Spectrum, don't use AT&T, don't use Cincinnati Bell as your primary email account. Because that way you can switch ISPs and you don't have to change anything. You don't have to tell everybody in the world that you changed your email address, because you haven't. You're still using, your Gmail account, or you're using your Yahoo account.
Earlier you said that web email is somehow less desirable than, what was the other option?
Using an email client.
Yeah, okay. So what you just said is that we should use web email as the primary email address. Is that correct?
Okay. It's how you get your emails, not what the email address is. How many email addresses do you have, Derek?
I don't know, maybe 5.
Okay. You got maybe 5. If you've got 5 and you have to check all 5 of them, if you do webmail, you got to fire up your web browser and log into the first one and look at your mail, send and receive, and then you got to log out, and then you have to log into the second one, do your mail, log in, log out, In other words, you got to do it 5 times. If you're using a program like Outlook or Apple Mail, it talks to all 5 of those accounts at the same time and allows you to send and receive mail with the one program. That's a big time saving. If you only have one email account that you monitor, then webmail is just fine. You just ignore the advertisements they have posted all over. Okay, who else has got a question? George Reinhardt,
one
we'll
little
go to
question.
you. We're going to go to George Reinhardt, then we'll go to George Herzog.
Okay, thank you. So my email address is george.reinhardt@att.net.
Okay.
Now, if I would quit AT&T and
I'm no longer their customer. Okay.
Yeah, I'm no longer their customer. Then I would also, that email address would not be valid anymore.
What usually happens is they'll allow you to read emails from it, but they stop all outgoing email.
Oh.
In other words, you could read stuff that people sent to it, but you can't send anything from it.
Well, several of the things that I communicate with use my email address.
Yeah.
I just told you as an ID.
Yep.
So if I switch providers,
yep,
then I need to go to each one of these and change.
Yep.
Okay.
Now that's why I recommend when people set up their primary email, what they're going to use as their primary email, that they use something that is not an internet service provider, that they go with, in my case, William Herrick at iCloud.com, or, William Herrick at AOL.com, or William Herrick at gmail.com, because those companies, they're not going to go away.
Right.
And I can link with those guys. I can link 2 together. So I can have my backup email for my Yahoo accounts is an AOL email, or I may use a Google account as my backup for an an Apple Mail account, so that I'm never locked out of an account. Okay. It's the same thing that happens if you've got an email that was provided to you by an employer. The day after you stop working for the company, they deactivate the account on the email server and they archive all this stuff in case there's ever an HR litigation that comes up. So if you used your employer email to register for Facebook and you want to change your Facebook password, it's going to send a validation message to the email account that you don't have access to. See where the problem is there? So I've got a friend who just retired from Cox Newspapers. He used his company provided phone number and his company provided email address to register for all sorts of crap out there on the internet. And now he's locked out of all those guys because when they send the validation request, the text to his phone or to his email, it's a phone that he doesn't have anymore, and it's an email he doesn't have anymore.
Did you just say that iCloud.com is the one that you think it's a kind of exists all the time? You never have to worry about it.
Okay. It goes like this, Derek. Okay. I go with either gmail.com or the Apple iCloud.com. When I set up an Apple ID, I bought something from Apple. I set up an Apple ID. Okay. Part of that deal is I get an email account from Apple.
Okay.
And most people don't realize that they got it. And I find that, what's the chances of Apple going out of business tomorrow? Okay, I think Apple's going to be around long after William Herrick is no longer around. Same thing with Google. I think they'll be around long after I'm no longer around. So that's okay. That works out to my advantage. As long as I'm around and I need it, they'll be around. Where if it's something that's more transitory, like an employer or an internet service provider, if I get fed up with this particular company providing my internet, I'm going to kick them to the curb and go with somebody else. Well, if I'm using their email, it's going to make me stop and go, oh, wait, how many things did I sign up with an AT&T.com email? Maybe it's not worth me going to the lower price guy because of the inconvenience of all that. See, it's a way they get you locked into their services. Okay, now we're going to go to George Herzog.
Okay, I've got two questions and I'm easily confused. The first one kind of plays off of your answer to the other George. I think you said you prefer Gmail to say my sbcglobal.net, because if I ever drop the ISP, then I'm out of luck. Is that correct? Did I understand that
correct? Plus, there's another thing. Gmail is 5 characters. sbcglobal.net is a lot more characters, and it's harder to remember.
Now, is Gmail a webmail?
Gmail is Google providing you with an email account. You can exit with an email client, or you can use a web browser and point it at google.com, and you log in with your Google account.
Okay, and you had said earlier, I thought that if you're on webmail, you're going to get hit with a lot of ads. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I mean, if you only have one email account that you track, you learn to ignore the advertising if you're doing webmail. I mean, and the other thing that's nice about webmail is if I'm at a hotel and I want to check my email, I'm not going to ask the hotel management to install an email client on their lobby computer. I'm just going to fire up a web browser, log into that Google or Apple or whoever is my AOL, whoever's providing my email, log in, authenticate, read my email, and then log out. Webmail is really great for that when you're moving. You're transitory. You're on somebody else's machine or somebody else's device.
Now, when I'm
Hey, Bill.
Yep.
May I interrupt? Rick has got to go. He's going to cut off the recording.
Okay.
So you still stay on. He's not going to stop the.
Yeah, I'll make Mark the host. You just
I gotta go too.
Oh well, then I'll make you the host, Bill. You can be the host. You're just gonna, when you're done, disconnect.
Do I have to do anything on my end other than?
You just keep talking. You can when you leave the meeting, it'll cut everybody off. Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
So this is what I get for taking a longer break in the middle.
I think it was the long help session, but we're all right.